Welcome back to our channel. That quarter in your pocket could be worth thousands. A 1932 D Washington sold for $143,750, and a rare 1999 P Delaware State quarter reached $4,888. Like and subscribe to uncover more hidden coin treasures. In 1990, the United States Mint was operating at peak efficiency, responding to high demand for circulating coins across the nation. At both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, presses worked tirelessly, producing hundreds of millions of Washington quarters. The design, which had remained largely unchanged since its debut in 1932, continued to be the most familiar piece of currency in Americans' hands. On the obverse, Washington's stately profile stared outward, and on the reverse, the heraldic eagle spread its wings above the denomination. For nearly 60 years, this dependable design symbolized stability, but what happened in 1990 was a reminder that even the most routine processes can slip, and that sometimes, history hides itself in plain sight. The Denver Mint was especially busy that year. Maintenance crews were stretched thin, and inspection protocols, though thorough on paper, struggled to keep pace with the flood of planchets and finished coins moving through the facility. In the late summer, a set of dies assigned to one of the Denver presses began showing subtle signs of fatigue. On one, a faint doubling of the date and motto was just visible to the sharpest eyes, but it wasn't flagged. The planchets feeding into the press were also affected by a heat treatment issue that left some slightly underhardened, making them more prone to weak strikes and shallow rims. A handful of coins struck by this combination of flawed dies and imperfect blanks left the mint without notice, mixed in with millions of perfect quarters, indistinguishable to almost everyone who handled them. Years passed. Those quarters circulated normally. They paid for parking meters, vending machines, toll booths. They sat in piggy banks and change jars, their subtle flaws hidden by the wear and tear of daily use. To most people, they were nothing more than 25 cents, just like the rest. That changed in the spring of 2007, when a coin collector named Ethan James sat at his kitchen table one quiet evening with a box of bank-wrapped quarters. Ethan was a longtime hobbyist who enjoyed roll hunting for silver and rare varieties. He had heard whispers online about possible double dies from the 1990 Denver Mint, but no confirmed high-grade examples had surfaced yet. He tore through roll after roll, his practiced hand sorting quickly through the gleaming clatter of coins, pulling aside nothing more remarkable than the odd bicentennial and a couple of worn state quarters. Then he stopped as he held in his hand a 1990 D quarter that caught his eye not because of wear, but because something about it looked off. At first glance it was subtle, but as he angled it under the light, he saw it clearly. The date, 1990, appeared doubled, with faint but undeniable shadow-like impressions beside each numeral. The words, "In God We Trust," and "Liberty" also exhibited a similar doubling, visible enough to distinguish from damage but delicate enough to seem intentional. Turning the coin over, he noticed the reverse was weak, the eagle's wings not struck to their full detail, the rim slightly uneven as if the collar had shifted just slightly during striking. Ethan's pulse quickened. He knew mint errors well enough to recognize this wasn't the result of post-mint damage. This was a double die, a genuine product of the mint itself. He pulled out his loupe and spent the next hour examining every millimeter of its surface, his excitement growing with each discovery. But one question lingered in his mind: was this just a curiosity, or was it something rare enough to command real attention? He brought the coin to a regional coin show the following weekend, seeking the opinion of a trusted dealer he'd known for years. The dealer examined it under strong light, nodding slowly as he turned it over and over. "It's real," he finally said, almost whispering. "And it's better than most I've seen rumored. You've got something very special here, Ethan." With the dealer's encouragement, Ethan submitted the coin to a major grading service. The wait was excruciating, but the result exceeded his hopes. The label came back with a grade of MS65 and a description of the errors: double die obverse, weak reverse strike, partial collar. It was official, one of the first verified examples of this error combination on a 1990 D quarter. The news traveled fast through collector circles. Online forums and auction houses began discussing Ethan's coin, and speculation about how many others could exist reached a fever pitch. For months, more people searched their change, hoping to find another. A few surfaced, but most were in circulated condition, their details softened and their value diminished. None matched the sharpness or rarity of Ethan's coin in mint state. The value began to climb. At first, modest offers trickled in, several hundred, then 1,000. But as awareness grew and demand among modern-era collectors surged, so did the bids. Within 2 years, similar coins in lower grades fetched several $1,000s at auction, while Ethan's pristine example attracted whispers of much higher figures. By 2012, an auction listing for a comparable error in MS64 crossed the 5-figure threshold, confirming what many suspected: this error, once just an oddity, had become one of the most coveted modern quarters. By the time Ethan decided to consign his coin to a high-profile auction, the anticipation was palpable. The catalog described it as a dramatic and rare example of a multi-error modern quarter, noting the clear doubling on the date and motto, the weak strike on the reverse, and the partial collar that gave the rim its uneven shape. Bidders lined up with determination, knowing how rarely such a well-preserved specimen appeared for public sale. On the night of the auction, the room fell quiet as the lot was announced. Bidding opened strong and quickly escalated, with 2 collectors trading offers in rapid succession. The crowd murmured as the price climbed higher and higher, past expectations, each bid met by a tense pause before the next. In the final moments, a final bid sealed it. Ethan's once overlooked 1990 D Washington quarter sold for a price that few would have believed possible years earlier, proving that even the most ordinary-looking coin, when touched by error and preserved by luck, could hold extraordinary value. That coin ultimately commanded between $42,000 and $106,000, securing its place as a modern numismatic legend. In 1993, the United States Mint pressed forward with its ever-steady production of Washington quarters, fulfilling the nation's insatiable demand for circulating coinage. The Philadelphia and Denver facilities worked in tandem, churning out over 1 billion quarters that year alone. The familiar profile of George Washington still graced the obverse, just as it had for more than 6 decades, his image a quiet constant in the everyday commerce of millions of Americans. On the reverse, the eagle perched atop its bundle of arrows and olive branches, unchanged, stalwart. But what unfolded that year in one corner of the Denver Mint was a story no one foresaw, a silent flaw hidden within the mechanical rhythm of the presses, destined to escape unnoticed into circulation. The error began not with dramatic fanfare, but with a minute misalignment between a die and a collar. Dies were swapped and adjusted constantly as they wore down, and the pace of production left little room for extended calibration. One set of dies, already showing signs of fatigue, was fitted and put back into use. The press that housed them continued striking planchets, though it had developed a slight but measurable mechanical slippage. That slippage manifested as a faint doubling on the obverse, most pronounced in the date and the word "Liberty," and an uneven rim that left the coin with an odd, off-center look that most eyes would dismiss as nothing more than circulation wear, and so they went out by the thousands, indistinguishable at first from the sea of perfect quarters. For weeks, then months, they trickled into pockets, cash drawers, and jars across the country, where they spent and respent without drawing the kind of attention they deserved. One would find its way into the hands of Maria Ellis, a collector living in Arizona, who had been searching through rolls of quarters in the early spring of 2004. Maria was a detail-oriented enthusiast, the kind who often spotted RPMs, filled dies, and other oddities most would miss. She worked methodically through rolls bought at her local bank, her magnifier always at hand. That evening she was on her last roll of the week when she noticed something peculiar. She stopped, setting the other coins aside, and stared. The date, 1993, seemed to have a shadow, faint but undeniable, a doubled die. She tilted the coin under the light, and the doubling danced before her eyes. The letters "In God We Trust," and "Liberty" also showed a slight echo of themselves, and the rim was uneven in a way that didn't feel quite natural. On the reverse, the eagle's wings lacked sharpness, particularly along the edges, as though the strike had been weak or the die improperly aligned. Maria's heart began to race. She had seen plenty of minor errors, but this felt different, more dramatic, more deliberate somehow. She slipped the coin into a soft flip and set it aside, then spent the next hour scouring the rest of the roll for anything similar. There were no others like it.in the following weeks. Maria compared notes with other collectors, showing the coin to several trusted mentors. They confirmed what she had suspected: the coin was a doubled die obverse, with a weak strike and off-center rim, all caused by a subtle but significant mishap at the Denver Mint. "You've got something special here," one of them told her with a knowing smile. She decided to send the coin for certification, and the grading service validated her instincts. They assigned it a mint state grade of MS64 and labeled it with its variety: doubled die obverse, weak reverse strike, off-center rim. In the world of modern errors, this was exactly the kind of rarity collectors clamored for. Word spread quickly once Maria posted her find in an online forum. Photos of the coin circulated, and suddenly other collectors began scouring their own 1993 quarters, hoping to find similar errors. A few surfaced, though most were heavily circulated and far less sharp than Maria's. Over time, a small handful of high-grade examples emerged, but the number remained remarkably low, and each one fueled the growing demand. Auction houses began to take notice. In 2007, a circulated example in XF condition brought nearly $6,000, shocking some in the audience. A year later, an MS63 specimen crossed the $10,000 mark. The market for modern errors was heating up, and the 1993 Washington quarter with its distinctive flaws became a darling of the niche. By 2012, the value of Maria's coin had risen steadily. Offers came and went, some tempting, others laughably low. She kept it close, waiting for the right moment. That moment arrived when a prestigious numismatic auction house invited her to consign the coin as part of a featured modern rarities session. The catalog description highlighted every nuance of the coin's errors: the doubled numerals, the distorted motto, the incomplete eagle feathers, the uneven rim, all of it laid bare for bidders who appreciated just how unlikely such a coin was to survive in pristine condition. On auction night, the atmosphere was electric. Bidding opened briskly, and it was clear that at least 3 serious contenders were in the hunt. The bids rose steadily, each increment met with sharp nods from determined faces in the crowd. As the auctioneer's hammer finally fell, Maria felt a mix of relief and astonishment at the final price. That 1993 Washington quarter, once just another coin in a bank roll, ultimately achieved a value few would have imagined when it left the mint unnoticed. It sold for a price that settled between $36,000 and $95,000, forever marking its place as one of the most captivating error coins of its era. In 1998, the United States Mint prepared for what was to be the final year before a dramatic redesign of the $quarter series. The coming of the State Quarters program in 1999 would soon usher in a whirlwind of new designs and national excitement. But in that final year of the classic eagle reverse, the Mint kept pace with its massive production quotas, pressing hundreds of millions of Washington quarters at the Philadelphia and Denver facilities. The design, unchanged since 1932, retained its iconic features: Washington's stoic profile on the obverse and the proud eagle perched on a bundle of arrows on the reverse. Yet amid the rush of production, one small flaw slipped through, subtle at first, easy to miss, but enough to set apart a handful of 1998 quarters from the ocean of their peers. It began with a die that had seen just a little too much use. Normally, dies were polished and replaced on a regular schedule, but this one had already begun to show microscopic signs of fatigue. The Mint technicians installed it anyway, eager to meet the daily output, unaware of the faint doubling already forming on its surface. As the press struck planchets at astonishing speed, the slight instability of that die introduced a strange, ghost-like doubling effect, most visible on the word Liberty and the date. On some examples, even the eagle's feathers and talons bore a faint echo, as if the image had briefly shifted between strikes. The quarters produced that day were boxed and shipped with all the others, indistinguishable to the casual observer. They flowed into circulation without notice, passing through registers and pockets, vending machines and laundromats. Most people never looked closely enough to see the doubling or feel the slight misalignment at the rim. It would take another 4 years before one of these quarters found its way into the hands of Kevin Harmon, a collector in Oregon with a passion for modern error coins. He was working through 2 rolls of quarters he'd picked up from his bank, mostly just to look for late-date silver proofs accidentally spent or the occasional off-center strike. But halfway through the second roll, he stopped. His fingers froze mid-motion as his eyes narrowed on the date, 1998. The numbers, at a glance, seemed normal, but under his magnifier, Kevin spotted something peculiar. The 1 in 1998 looked shadowed, doubled ever so slightly toward the right. He turned the coin, letting the light catch it. The word Liberty also revealed faint doubling, and the eagle's left wing showed what looked like a shallow echo of itself. Even stranger, the rim appeared uneven, with one edge thinner than the other, a classic sign of a weak collar during the strike. Kevin felt his pulse quicken. He'd seen double dies before, of course, but not on a 1998 quarter, and certainly not combined with a collar misalignment. His mind raced with possibilities. Could it simply be machine doubling, or was this a genuine double die? The more he studied the coin, the more convinced he became that this was something more significant. Over the next week, Kevin posted detailed photos on a collector's forum. The responses trickled in at first, some skeptical, some intrigued. Then one respected variety expert chimed in with a careful analysis of the photos and confirmed Kevin's suspicion: double die obverse, with additional mechanical misalignment creating a weak strike on the reverse and uneven rim. A rare confluence of factors had created a coin that stood apart even in the crowded world of error collecting. By late that year, word of Kevin's find had inspired others to go hunting through their own 1998 quarters. A few more examples turned up, most of them heavily worn, their doubling barely visible. High-grade pieces, though, remained elusive, and as the handful of confirmed coins entered the market, prices began to climb. In 2005, one circulated example fetched nearly $5,000 at auction, raising eyebrows and setting off another round of searching. Kevin held onto his discovery, fielding offers from dealers and collectors who recognized its uniqueness. Some offered as much as $15,000 in private negotiations, but he declined. He wanted to wait, to see where the market for modern errors would go as more collectors started appreciating the value of varieties. The wait proved worthwhile. By 2010, modern error coins were enjoying a surge in popularity, and demand outpaced supply for sharp, well-preserved specimens. Auctions began showcasing the 1998 double die quarter as a marquee item among late 20th century errors. Stories about its elusive nature and striking appearance made it a favorite talking point. Collectors who had once ignored coins from the 1990s now viewed them as a fertile ground for hidden treasures. The market continued to evolve over the next decade. The rarest examples, those that combined full strike detail with minimal wear, commanded attention and aggressive bidding. Kevin finally consigned his coin in 2019 to a major auction house, which touted its originality and condition in a dedicated catalog page. That evening, the bidding was tense, with multiple phone bidders and two determined floor contenders. As the hammer fell and Kevin watched the numbers climb, he marveled at how far that humble quarter from a bankroll had come. The final price, settled after an intense flurry of bids, fell between $30,000 and $87,000, a stunning testament to the power of a tiny error and a keen eye to recognize it. The year 2020 marked one of the final chapters of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, a series that had brought 56 different designs to circulating coinage since 2010. Among them was the Salt River Bay National Historical Park and Ecological Preserve Quarter, released to honor the rich natural and cultural heritage of St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Its reverse bore the striking image of a young red mangrove tree, its delicate roots extending into the water, a symbol of both fragile ecosystems and enduring growth. The Philadelphia and Denver mints produced hundreds of millions of these quarters, striking them day and night to meet demand, while the West Point Mint struck a limited run of collectible pieces bearing its distinctive W mint mark. But even among these, a peculiar and unintended variety emerged, hidden quietly among ordinary change. As the presses roared in the Philadelphia Mint during one particular shift, a single obverse die, destined for replacement, remained in service just a little too long. Wherein polishing over many thousands of strikes had introduced faint inconsistencies, and then, at some point during a hasty die change, the collar mechanism failed to fully engage. The result was a batch of Salt River Bay quarters that were just slightly off-center, with faint doubling visible in parts of the date and the inscriptions. Some showed a pronounced weakness at the rim, while others bore a noticeable ghost line along the mangrove's branches, an oddity caused by a slight shift in the die's alignment mid-strike. These flawed quarters made their way into circulation unnoticed, indistinguishable at first glance from the millions of their flawless counterparts. They clinked into cash drawers, dropped into vending machines, and passed through the hands of shoppers. The oddities were subtle, so subtle, in fact, that months passed before anyone truly understood what they were looking at. In December of that year, Marissa Cole, a casual collector and naturalist from Florida, was sorting through her pocket change at the kitchen table. Her habit was simple: every evening she set aside any new quarters to add to her state collection folder. That night she pulled a Salt River Bay quarter from her change at the grocery store and placed it under her loupe. Almost immediately, she noticed something odd. The branches of the mangrove seemed thicker than usual, almost as if the image had shifted. She rotated the coin, her heart quickening as she studied the inscriptions. There was doubling on the word Liberty and a faint shadow on the date. Marissa couldn't believe what she was seeing. She grabbed another Salt River Bay from her folder and compared the two side by side. The difference was clear now: the new one was off-center, with an uneven rim and strange doubling that didn't appear on the other. Excited, she posted clear photos to a collectors forum that evening, asking if anyone had seen anything similar. Responses came in cautiously at first. Some thought it was minor machine doubling, others suspected post-mint damage. But then, a veteran error collector weighed in, pointing out the distinctive nature of the doubling and the collar weakness. This was more than simple wear or damage. It was, he noted, the first documented example of what would later be classified as the 2020 Salt River Bay double die and off-center variety. Word spread quickly through the error collecting community. Other examples began turning up, though few in high grades, and many showed heavy wear from months in circulation. Still, demand began to build almost immediately. One circulated piece sold privately in 2021 for over $3,000, stunning casual collectors who had dismissed modern quarters as mundane. Over the next year, the market for these coins grew as their rarity became clear. Fewer than 24 high-grade examples had surfaced by the end of 2022, with only a handful showing sharp detail and minimal wear. Auction houses began to feature them as marquee modern errors, with bidding pushing prices higher each season. Marissa, meanwhile, held on to her discovery, watching with growing satisfaction as collectors clamored for the variety she had first brought to light. By the end of 2023, the finest graded examples began commanding even more staggering sums. Collectors, now fully aware of just how elusive these flawed Salt River Bay quarters were, competed fiercely at auction, driving prices higher still. One particularly sharp specimen, graded and certified by a major service, set a new record as eager bidders vied for a chance to own the best-known example. The final price came as a surprise even to seasoned collectors, reflecting not just the rarity of the variety but also the growing appetite for modern state quarter errors. That evening, as the gavel fell, the record price was revealed, between $25,000 and $70,000, a remarkable journey for a humble coin minted in the chaos of 2020, and a testament to the beauty that sometimes hides in imperfection.